Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my wonderful co-hosts, we review a film either current or classic every time we get together on this show. And this week is no exception. We are pulling from the current category with a review of Spider-Man: No Way Home, the newest Spider flick. We're going to break it down, tell you what we thought, and would love to hear what you think as well. We've already got several folks who have jumped on to the live stream with us. Howdy, welcome. Be sure to say hello in the live chat. Let us know you are here. Speaking of letting you know who's here, let me introduce my aforementioned co-host. Jim Pugliafico is with us here in the virtual studio. Welcome, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, babe, and thanks for the introduction. I'm excited for this show. Big movie we're going to talk about. We might have a surprise. Well, not a surprise if you read the tweets, but we got a special wrinkle in this episode, so I'm especially excited about that.
I'm glad you're especially excited. It's going to be a fun conversation, I feel. And to help us with that conversation, the amazing Will is here. Welcome, Will. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Spider Fam? Pretty excited for this one. This is a huge release, bringing people out to the theaters in droves, for good or for bad, depending on kind of how you're feeling right now about crowds. But I'm really excited to see a lot of people enthused about this movie, and I'm really excited to talk to the three of you about it.
Ooh, the three of us. Mm-hmm. That almost makes it sound like there's a fourth person. Oh, wait, there is. We are celebrating 9 years on the Movie Bears podcast in this week's episode, and we wanted to bring a really special guest on board to help us both just kind of mark the day, but also join us for the review of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Please welcome Will Derr from DGeekWill. Hey, welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. You've been around for a long time with this show. That's, I think, how I first came to meet you anyway.
Yeah, there was way back in the day, which makes me feel super old. You guys used to do, like, people would send in pictures or something, and you would do highlights, and I was actually one of the highlights, and I was wearing a Captain America hoodie. I remember that. So that's how I got introduced to you guys. So yeah, it's good. No, I'm happy to be here. Happy that you guys invited me on.
The thirst trap worked, guys. We got Will D here.
Hey, I'd be lying if I said I haven't been wanting to join one of these in a while. So when Jim messaged me, slight panic attack. But it was like, I was like, oh, wait, hold on, wait, seriously? Like, okay, all right, like, give me a second. Yeah, no, it's great.
It's a literal thirst trap, though.
You have nothing to worry about. You are supremely,
I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah, you've got nothing to worry about.
One of my favorite characters. So
Well, awesome. Well, Will D, for any of our listeners who don't know about your amazing YouTube channel, maybe you could just real quick plug that so they know where to go and how to find your excellent content.
Sure. I am DGeekWill on YouTube. I've been doing it just about 4 years now. It is literally a hobby. I make no money off of it. I was just like, I want to learn how to use Premiere Pro. And I was like, what do I like talking about? Geeky stuff, like you can see behind me. So I just got a camera and started recording, and over 200 videos later, apparently, I've almost at 400 subscribers. So it's just something I love doing. I just like talking about geeky stuff, and I drink also on there sometimes. So yeah, that's just what I do. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So
yeah. Well, I mean, over 200 videos.
Yeah. Hey, 2020 gave me a lot of time to do videos. So
yeah, that speaks a lot to, like, you talk about, not getting any money for it. You do it for the love of it. And I mean, that's totally a concept that we have no idea about, because we're breaking in the sweet podcast money.
Yeah, so, right.
So God. Yeah. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Well, definitely glad to have you with us. It's kind of crazy to think that we've been doing this for 9 years at this point. You really took me back there, Will D, when you mentioned how we used to do the like picture submission and highlights. I think we were doing that like years 4 through 6. So even that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of insane, but I can't think of guys I'd rather be doing this with. 9 years later, it's exciting to get together. And what a big movie to talk about as part of our 9-year celebration. We've got some folks in the live chat, by the way. Jordan Riley says, "Hey Bears." Hey Jordan. Good to see you.
Long-time friend Jordan.
Welcome. Ryan Rivera is here as well. Ryan, another longtime listener of the show. And Sean, hey Sean, says he and the kiddos are going to go see Spider-Man No Way Home on Thursday. His daughter is apparently bouncing off the walls to see this film. Totally get that, Sean. This is a great time to mention for anybody that may be curious how we're going to do this, especially if you're new to the show. We're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, completely spoiler-free, for probably 10 or 15 minutes before we kind of rip the Band-Aid off and really get fully into spoilers. So if you're like, I don't know if I should be here right now, don't worry. As long as you don't mind hearing about our initial thoughts and impressions, again, without spoilers, you're in the right place. No worries. It's a safe space. We got you. But Jim, Will, other Will, how do you guys feel about jumping into our movie conversation for the week?
Ready.
Let's swing in.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Thwip. Here we go. Our discussion of Spider-Man No Way Home. All right. So, Mr. Lindis, maybe you could give us a brief setup. I think most people know what they're getting into with the Spider-Man movie. It's been marketed like crazy, but give us the brief setup of this film and your initial spoiler-free, of course, thoughts on the film.
Okay, so the spoiler-free description of this one. Spider-Man No Way Home is a movie that exists. Okay, I can go a little bit deeper than that. I can go a little deeper than that.
A little deeper. But be warned.
Yeah, be warned. So this description is straight off of IMDb. It's a vetted one. It reveals only what's been revealed pretty heavily in the trailer, so I think it's pretty fair game. But so in the last set of movies, Spider-Man's identity was revealed to the world. Everyone knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle are like shouting it from the rafters, and it's caused a lot of disruption to Peter's life as well as the life of his closest friends. Of course, Peter Parker in the MCU knows a magician, specifically Doctor Strange. So he goes to him and says, "Hey, Doctor Strange, I need you to use magic to fix this." Hey, Steven. Hey, sir. He goes and tries to get all of that resolved through magic. And magic happens, but magic doesn't go exactly right. And because of that, a bunch of different foes from other worlds start to appear. And Peter Parker has to really discover a way to not only resolve that, balance like these new threats, his personal life, and also really discover what it means to be Spider-Man. That pretty fair? Is that spoiler light on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good job, Will.
Well done.
Cool. Now, as for whether I liked it or not, yeah, this is a fun movie. I really liked it. This is a super messy narrative. So you have to just sort of like, because of what they're trying to accomplish here, you can't go into this looking for like a super tight script or anything like that. This is basically throw all the elements into a pot and see how they work. What's really cool about it here is in most movies, I would say that that's more of a bug, a spider bug, I guess. In this case, I think it's a feature. I think the messiness and the frenzied kinetic energy of this movie really lets it move through all of its different set pieces and reveals and different things that it has to do in a way that doesn't let it get bogged down under its own weight. So it's a very uneven movie, but again, in a good way, all in all. It's super fun. If you are a fan of the franchise, if you are a fan of Marvel movies and superhero movies, I think you'll enjoy this. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, I think you'll enjoy this. And if you're one of those people who feels like, I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but I don't feel that he's really gotten to the core of what it is to be like the comic book Spider-Man yet, I think this movie does a good job of helping you bridge that gap and make him feel a little bit more closer to like my Spider-Man or whatever it is. So super fun. I think that most people are having a pretty good time with this movie. And I think that most people listening to this will probably also have a pretty good time with this as well.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for the setup and your initial impressions of the film. Looking forward to our spoiler section so we can talk about all kinds of things we can't talk about right now. But Jim Pugliafico, how about you? Did you like this as much as Will? Was this kind of a letdown? I know you're not typically into these superhero movies, but what did you think?
Yeah, I'm not the greatest, fan of comics. I didn't really grow up in the comic books too much. But of course I know Spider-Man from the, God, when was the Spider-Man cartoon series out? Was that like
60s?
70s? I don't know.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Spider-Man, ever a spider can. Da, 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 da.
I came out with the other one. But,
yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah, I know Spider-Man. I've seen all the other movies. Obviously, we've talked about them on this podcast. And so going into it, my expectations aren't super high. But experiencing the movie is chock full of right away I could tell this is a movie for the fans. This is a movie for fans of a little bit for general Marvel fans, but certainly Spider-Man fans. This is a like, I don't know too many. I'm thinking to myself, there's not too many Spider-Man fans that are not going to like this movie. It's just, I think it's kind of a special movie, and it actually even worked on me. And we can compare it to other Marvel movies. Jordan's talking about that now in the chat, how it compares to like Avengers Endgame and things like that. So we can talk about that a little bit too. But I actually really liked this movie quite a bit. And I liked the fact that a lot of the times the emotional beats in these films don't work on me because I don't have the attachment to, and the investment in the characters that a lot of, more hardcore fans might have. So those things generally don't hit me as hard. But in this movie, I felt it. So props on the movie for that. We'll talk about what that might be later. But I got the emotional beats. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought the action beats were a little, sometimes got a little bit tiring, as they sometimes do for me. I like more of the character stuff, and this movie had a lot of that in it. Just the way it handled all of its characters. Will, you mentioned there's a lot of moving parts in here. They kind of throw everything in a bag, but I thought they handled the characters very well. So, yeah, to me, this is a big hit. It deserves all the accolades that it's getting, because I'm on the same wavelength. So yeah, I'm down. I think people should definitely see it. Obviously, if you're a fan, you've probably already seen it once. But I know there's some people in the chat here that are getting ready to see it this week. If you're fans, I wish I could kind of be there with you. So when you experience this movie as a fan, because I think it really. Hits the fans perfectly. So, yeah, I'm getting ready to talk spoilers with you guys when you're ready.
All right.
I've got this mental image of just like some random members of our audience, like sitting in a crowded theater, and Jim just like creeping around the chair, just like,
wait till you see this.
He's about to. Okay, are they gonna
if
cry?
that's the case, you should have sat next to me. So
there you go.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Jim, I'm definitely appreciative of you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much. Looks like we have two pretty big positives. Will D, definitely want to hear your thoughts, and I'll ask you for those in a second, but I just wanted to highlight this adorable comment from your husband in the chat.
Mhm.
Kev says, "So proud of my husband." Heart face, heart face. Are you blushing? You're totally blushing, aren't you?
Yeah. He's sweet. He's my biggest supporter. So, of
Oh,
course.
well, Kev, thanks so much for joining the show so you can see Will D give his thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home. Will, I've been dying to know what you think ever
Okay.
since we were like, oh my God, let's get Will on the show. Lay it on us, my friend.
Okay, so quick disclaimer. I am that Spider-Man fan. I'm not even gonna lie. Like you, I started with the animated series, but I started with the 90s animated series with the sweet guitar riff. So that's the one I grew up with. But I also dabbled in a lot of the comics. I know the characters lore pretty well. I played all the games and stuff like that. And I've seen this movie twice. I saw it again today. I will say, for me personally, this is the best live action Spider-Man movie. I still kind of hold Into the Spider-Verse a little bit higher, but they're very close to each other. Very close to each other. Probably because I think Miles has grown on me a lot more in later years in terms of a character. But in terms of this movie, yes, this is to me was kind of like, it's very fan servicey, but it was done well. It was done very well. I didn't feel like they just threw everything at it just to throw it. There was kind of a purpose for a lot of the stuff that was in the movie. In terms of the trilogy, this wrapped up the home trilogy for me perfectly. It made me look back at the previous two and kind of recontextualize what those movies were, what the purpose of them were, why he started off the way he did, and where he ended up in this movie to kind of become that, like you said, Will, that version of Spider-Man that most people feel like is the true version of Spider-Man. Because I know people had issues with the depiction of the MCU Spider-Man because of his deep relationship with Iron Man and stuff like that, and they never really felt like he was. Yeah. But this movie definitely resolves it in a satisfying way, and it does have a lot of super awesome elements and cameos and things that we can talk about more in spoilers. That like again, you want to see somebody geek out. I was smushed between two people and slightly uncomfortable on my first screening just because, of the world that we're in right now. But I still was like, I did kind of like when certain things happen. So, but yeah, no, we can talk more about that in spoilers. But yes, this is the best live action Spider-Man movie, like hands down. And it caps off this home trilogy very well. And yeah, we'll talk. I'll say more.
I can't wait to get into some of you guys. And Will, you mentioned being swished in between two people and how your second screening was less populated. And after Brad, maybe after Brad talks about the movie, maybe we can talk about our movie experiences a little bit before we hop into spoilers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we can chat about. For me, gosh, all three of you were so positive on this movie. I hate to be the one that kind of brings the positivity train to a halt, so I won't. I know. You got me. I really loved this movie, you guys. I have to say, I think it's certainly my favorite of the three Tom Holland films so far. Whether it's my all-time favorite Spider-Man movie, I think that's still Into the Spider-Verse, to be honest. I love that movie so much. But I would agree with you, Will D, in terms of live action films. This is probably the best of the live action films for me. So you guys have already mentioned a lot of the reasons why this movie is so great. I don't want to belabor those things too much, so I'll just say co-signed to all of that. You know from watching the trailers, we get to see some of the villains from Spider-Man movies past make their return. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe, who just do absolutely amazing rock star jobs in this film.
I was Jamie Foxx. I
yes,
Jamie Foxx got a redemption like crazy in this film.
Yeah, so. Jamie too.
Yep. Definitely great to see him show up again. There's some, there's like some justice, I think, done to these characters in bringing them back that I wish we'd had, in their original films.
And giving them more depth in this movie, even though there's so many of them, than the movie that centered on them gave them. You know what I mean? It's
And I
interesting
didn't
how that worked
oh,
out. We'll talk about that, how they
yeah,
did
and I
that.
didn't say this. You don't really necessarily need to see anything but maybe the Tom Holland movies to really understand what's going on. They do a
Yeah.
good job of kind of
Yeah.
easing people, because I didn't rewatch any of the Raimi or the Amazing Spider-Man movies before going to see this. So
Yeah. I didn't either. I was tempted to, but that was a lot of movie time, and I just
yeah.
haven't had that time lately. But yeah, this movie is an absolute home run score for me. Let's talk a little bit about the movie going experience. Jim, did you want to chat a little bit about how things went in our screening?
Yeah, so we saw it in a pretty big theater, one of the fake IMAXs, with the big reclining seats that have the swinging tables and all that stuff. So the density of people in the theater wasn't as bad as it could be, like in the old style theater, the older style theaters, even the stadium seat ones, because these big luxury recliners like give you a bit more room right on the sides and certainly front to back. There's like nobody like directly in front of you or like directly behind you. So it's a different feel for me. And even though our theater showing was pretty full, maybe only a few seats like on the very ends and in the front that were open. That didn't make me uncomfortable. What made me uncomfortable was a lot of unmasked people walking into the theater, like 90%. And I'm like, I can't believe it. Like we went to see West Side Story and there were like 10% of the people that went to see this movie and most of them were masked. But yet we go to see this movie and I thought, which is a younger, kind of a younger family demographic, I thought more people would be more percentage wise, more people would be masked. And I was shocked to find out that they weren't. But that's a whole nother discussion. I don't want to get into that too much. I'll just say it was great. The only thing is in these theaters with the luxury loungers, like you've seen these videos, fan reaction videos of people in the theater, like reacting to things on the screen and, cheering and jumping up. Generally, that's not happening in the theaters that we're in. And I don't know if it's because, we're kind of spread out a little bit or, I don't know. I'd be interested to know if that happened in any of your screenings.
It's interesting. Fortunately, at my screening, like everyone was masked. My theater does have a, you have to have a mask policy, like walking through at least. And if you're sitting down, it's only while you're eating that you can't take it off. So most people are pretty good about that. But at the same time, I kind of do wish at some of these movies that with everyone unmasked, that I could find a wizard to make a wish to, so that they could all like get their identities back. My experience was subdued but good. It was a packed theater. I was there. We got food. They had Green Goblin pizza and Green Goblin loaded fries and pumpkin spice bomb shakes.
Nice.
And these little menus that look like masks that were super cool.
That's cool.
And in terms of the reaction, like I've had friends who went to different screenings at other theaters and they've said it was like absolutely rowdy all the way through. That was not my experience here. There were a couple of like, needle drop moments where there was a lot of that I heard across
or a smattering of claps or something.
Or but it wasn't like all movie long, like every single thing. It was like a couple of like key moments where people reacted. And it's the same. Honestly, it's the same energy that I would get from like honestly less like in terms of that less energy than with the new Star Wars movies. The new Star Wars movies, I got a lot more like people giving random applauses at every single appearance. But yeah, it was a good screening.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Will D, was your screening your first screening or your second? Was it pretty energized with the crowd, or how'd that go?
I will say the first screening was more energized. That one was like relatively packed, and it was the first time since I've been back to the theaters that I actually had people on either side of me, which was where my internal like but good thing for me is that at least the people beside me were masked, and I had mine and I took it off when I was drinking and stuff like that, so it wasn't too bad. And the crowd was actually pretty hyped for it. I saw it on Sunday, and all the big reveals and drops, people cheered and stuff. So I didn't feel awkward when I let out a couple cheers. This screening I went to today, there was way less people, and there were some claps, but nothing dramatic. It was a Tuesday, so I figured it wasn't going to be as busy as like a weekend day. But yeah, I mean, I would say I think I felt more energized when I watched it the first time, but I got more emotional this time when I watched it compared to the first time. So yeah. I don't know if it's because the energy level I think was different, and since there wasn't as many people, my emotions were able to kind of come through a little bit more for certain scenes. But yeah, it was good overall. It wasn't bad, except for my own personal anxieties, but that was about it.
Yeah, so, and maybe because your anxieties were down, the second screening allowed your emotions to allowed you to kind of maybe get more immersed in those parts of the movie.
Well, you can connect with the material differently both times, right? Like the first time you are waiting to see what'll happen next, but the second time you're able to watch it and knowing about those big drops. It's more about how they react to the characters. Question for you, Will. Do you have a geeky mask?
Do I have a geeky mask? Yeah. I have one I got from Galaxy's Edge.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the only real geeky one I've got. Other ones, because I usually only wear them if I'm at work, because I don't really leave the house that often.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually those are just generic black ones. But one of the few times we went to Disney after things loosened up a little bit, I did pick up a Star Wars.
Nice.
One, of course.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Well, Jim, Will D. I think it's getting increasingly more difficult to talk about this film without getting into spoilers. What do you think about making that switch, making spoilers fair game? Are we ready?
Hang on. They're coming at you.
Cool. All right. So those of you who are listening, either through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume podcasts, feel free to use the time index and skip on past spoilers if you haven't seen the movie yet. Maybe hang around and see the film, then come on back and listen to this part of the show. If you're listening live, this is probably a good point. Unless you don't care about spoilers, this is probably a good point for you to bow out for now, and we'll see you next time. I know there's a few folks in the chat who said they're really waiting for the spoilers section. Well, here we go. Spoilers are officially fair game. Is there anywhere else to start but Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire making their appearances?
It's the worst kept secret of the movie, but sure.
That's right. Worst kept. The best marketing strategy ever.
Oh yeah. It's like, come on, when you release a clip where the lizard is being kicked in the face by air, it's like, come on.
And it's actually great because I've not seen a movie studio do specifically that to the degree that the MCU does, which is a lot of times companies will like edit around big reveals in their trailers. And in this one, they just put the scene in and they actually edit key things out of the frame itself. And that's one of the trailers had a shot of just Spider-Man swinging in. And that shot where like Sandman's coming up and Electro's there and Lizard's jumping out at him. And in the movie, all three Spider-Men are jumping towards him. In the trailer, it's just the one. And then you see as the Lizard is jumping forward, but he just goes and gets punched backwards.
Yeah. And that's I think that was only in Mexico that you saw it. It wasn't until it was leaked here, because if the US trailer, it cut it right before that spot. So whoever released that one down there.
Could have been an invisible force field, Will. Come on.
It could have been an invisible force field.
But also for that much space and to have one little Spider-Man with all that negative space.
Right. Like, You knew. And Ryan Rivera in the chat actually has a really great comment here. He says, I still appreciate that Marvel stuck to their guns, even though all of the leaks were true.
Yep.
Yeah, with that wink that they gave us. Like, what are you talking about, fans?
Yeah, and giving the fans exactly what they were asking for, too. Because that was one thing people were like, we really want to see all three of them in a movie. And I will say, those were some of my all-time favorite parts. Like the part I got emotional on, not the one that you would think. It's when they have the conversation on the top of the school.
Yes. Oh my
That's
God.
what
Yes.
killed me. That was the scene, because it was like, it made sense thematically. Like, he's at his lowest point. Who else would understand what he's going through than the two of them? And that's what that was. That was the part that knocked me on my ass, was just them all talking about their loss and stuff. And yeah,
for
that was
me.
emotional.
For me, it wasn't like, hey, are they or aren't they going to be in the movie? It was more like how they handled it in the movie, right? It wasn't just like a cameo, like, oh, here you, like they integrated them into the emotional plot of the movie, right? The kind of the main thrust of the story, which was great. And I think the part that got me the most was it Andrew Garfield saving MJ?
Yeah. He got some redemption, right?
Yeah,
after
that man needed
not
it. So dude.
Yeah.
Man.
And
and
his selling after, when he caught her and landed, that's what was the selling point. It wasn't that he caught her, it was just like he broke down, because he's like,
he realized what
that
represented for him.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful too, because I think this movie did something really, really unique in that it capitalized on nostalgia for things that were not necessarily universally beloved. So like, what I mean by that is, like, you can make a Ghostbusters movie in 2021 and capitalize on the fact that, hey, we love the 80s Ghostbusters movies, let's cram a bunch of that. You can make Solo exist as a movie and just say, hey, we love Star Wars, let's put a Wookiee in it, and hey, those are the dice, and cool. But this one, it used nostalgia from the Raimi films, which I think, generally speaking, 1 and 2 are, the first 2 Spider-Man movies are generally pretty well regarded and kind of the highest. And I think that's probably why Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina got the most weight here. But the reaction to Spider-Man 3, where Sandman came from, the 2 Andrew Garfield movies, those are generally have a much more of a mixed reaction. And yet seeing those characters on screen evokes that same nostalgia as something that is like universally beloved. And that is impressive. I did not like I think Spider-Man 2 with Electro, nothing against Jamie Foxx. I just think that's probably the worst live action Spider-Man movie. It was not a very good movie. And for me to then come out of this one and go like, yeah, like Jamie Foxx Electro was
awesome.
Oh man, totally.
He needed it.
They took that character and really added some gravitas to him, and man, seeing him with an arc reactor, I was like, how the fuck is that gonna go? First F-bomb of the show. There it is. That's mine. But I felt like, I don't know, they did a really good job bringing these other characters in. One of my fears was that Tom Holland was going to be completely sidelined in his own movie, because you knew they were going to be bringing in the other Spider-Man, the past villains. But I think they found a phenomenal way to keep him as the center throughput, while still, allowing the other characters to have all this room to breathe and to grow. The fact that Doc Ock ends up being a hero by the end of this film, like, makes me so happy inside.
Yeah, in terms of the villains too, I was happy that they all retained what their character was like in their previous iterations. Like, when in terms of Doc Ock, his transformation into the villain was always an accident. He wasn't a malicious person to begin with. It was because of the inhibitor, and it made sense that he was the first person that he helped, because that, it just, for his character, he's always been a man of science, that sort of thing. And even with Electro, like you've already said it, they redeemed the character mad crazy in this movie easily. I will say, like, Lizard and Sandman were pretty much afterthoughts for me. In terms of that, they were trying to do a Sinister Six, and I get it. And it was technically a Sinister Five. There wasn't, unless you count J. Jonah Jameson.
I think there was a sixth. He was just at the bar.
Oh,
Venom.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, we can talk about that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
No, but
Um,
on this topic, I like the fact that, you know, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, wow, they're going to take all these villain characters and give them, you know, give them empathy, right? From the, you know, kind of invoke empathy from the audience, right? Toward these characters and these villains. It just makes them much more, you know, multidimensional, I guess, right? And even though some of them came from origins that weren't evil, right? You mentioned Doc Ock, and even the Jamie Foxx character, Electro. I think he had just a normal. He just a normal guy, kind of.
He in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, he was a super fan of
Yeah.
Spider-Man, and then
Yeah,
he fell
yeah.
into the vat, and then
Right.
went blue for some reason. So yeah, but yeah, he wasn't necessarily like, none of them truly started off as a bad guy. Most
Right.
of them were all tragic figures, but that's quintessential for most of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. Like, he's never been the type of like, I'm gonna murder my arch nemesis. He's always been the one to try to save them, which is why, for me, why I say this is my favorite live, or to me the best live action one. It's the one that probably has felt the most like Spider-Man of any of them, in terms of just how the character is. And even going up against Doctor Strange in that really cool sequence, which he took him down with geometry, that was also funny. But
yeah, math. I'll say that I think I might be the only one who this was not my favorite live action Spider-Man. Mine still is Raimi 2, so the one with Doc Ock.
yeah.
I think that sort of raised the bar in terms of what a superhero movie can be. Same with, honestly, Spider-Man 1 too. I think that, you know, those first two Raimi movies are the reason we have an MCU today, even though they weren't part of the MCU. What I love so much about them, though, this is a compliment to this movie, though. I've long held that, like, the Green Goblin and Doc Ock from those first two movies are probably better in those two movies than the majority of MCU villains are, especially during Phase 1 MCU, where there was sort of a villain problem for any villain that wasn't Loki, right? And for them to take these two characters that I thought were like almost damn untouchable and to continue their story in a way that feels really organic and still like a capture, I think that's a real feather in this movie's hat. It carries on the legacy of what makes I've heard people say that now Dafoe, you can make the argument that Willem Dafoe is the best MCU villain, and I don't necessarily disagree with people who might think that. I think that he's up there. He's up there, yeah. And this movie was able to cement that. So yeah, I really loved that it carried through these story arcs so damn well.
What's interesting for me, when Green Goblin shows up initially, and he's like talking to his mask, which is hanging on the dumpster, I rolled so hard. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, back to the old school Spider-Man. This was so cringy back when this happened, this character. But like, then he's with May at Feast, and he is like scared of what's happening to him. And like, I don't know. Something came over me. Like, Willem Dafoe made me care about this character, he was the one I was least excited to see show up in this movie. And he ended up being probably my favorite part of this movie, aside from that conversation, Will D, that you mentioned between the three Spider-Men. Not even the action of them like whipping around together, just talking.
Did like when they got their.
Please log in through the Google Home app.
Shut up, Google. Sorry.
Shut up, Alexa.
I knew that was going to
Who invited you to the podcast?
So I will say I did geek out once they got their shit together and they were swinging together, and then they all did their poses landing on top. That was my, okay, this is the moment. This is the geek out moment right here. But yeah. But
why don't we take a picture? We each need to take our own picture of us in the Spider-Man like landing pose, right? Where he's down, one leg is out, one arm is back, you know, and that would be awesome.
Jim, have you seen us? How flexible do you think we are?
If I worked at it for 45 minutes, I might be able to do it.
I mean, I could probably get into that pose, and then that's how I would be for the rest of my days because I'm distorted into some sort of weird pretzel shape on the floor. Jim,
Yeah.
I appreciate how much faith you have in us.
I'm taking that on as a personal project right now. It's my I'm gonna do
I
it.
want to talk about the designs, the character designs in this too, because some of the characters got costume upgrades in different ways. We got to see that from a few different perspectives. We got to see the new Green Goblin suit. Like, you got to think about, like, the old Green Goblin suit was a product of what, 2001, whenever the first movie came out. Yeah,
2000.
2000, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's that, as cool as the character is, it's this weird clunky green thing. And so they gave him his new suit. Felt like it matched both the character, kind of how he got it within the movie, and it also felt like it matched like an MCU version of what the Green Goblin would be like. Same thing with, we mentioned Electro earlier, and now he's no longer this blue electric guy. He now looks like Jamie Foxx, and whenever his electricity would spark, the character in the comic has this goofy, like, a lightning bolt,
the mask.
triangle mask. And whenever he would, like, power up really big, you'd see like a flash of that. Like, that's the best type of fan service. Like, it fits within the design, but in a way that doesn't draw a ton of attention to itself.
Even after the rooftop scene, when they were coming up with the cures for everybody, just the banter between the three of them, they even did the little, like, which Peter are you talking to with Ned when he said Peter, and it was just like, it's like, oh god, you're all dorks.
they are.
Yes, and that's the fun part, is like, they're all, especially after such, I guess we can say the death of Aunt May was the catalyst for everything, because I didn't actually say that, but yeah, they end up giving Aunt May the Uncle Ben role of the important figure that died.
And did you guys know immediately after she said with great power comes great responsibility she was going to bite the big one?
No. I saw her take the shot with the glider, and when she got up, I'm like, how the fuck did you get up? Because you took that shot hard, and you don't have powers. And then so, like, when she's stumbling, I'm thinking, they're not going to kill her. And like, oh shit, she died. Oh, okay.
I went through a similar journey, like, although mine was a little more cynical. She took the hit from the glider, and I was like, oh, they killed her. And then she got back up, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And then she says the power with responsibility, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, she's about to fall over, and then she did. But not in like a like, oh, I outsmarted this movie or anything like that. It was like almost more like when you're like, that's the way almost like a deer must feel when it's caught in the headlights. Like, it knows that it's coming, but it also is like confused, too terrified to like move away from it. That's how I felt by that. Like, oh god, they're gonna do this, aren't they? Oh god, they're about to do this, aren't they? Oh god, they're doing this, aren't they?
Yeah,
and I loved it. Wow. It wrecked me, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Didn't so each of the Spider-Man characters has their own personal tragedy, right?
Yes.
And did the Holland character have his yet, or was this his?
This was it. You can make the argument again. Some people make the argument of like, oh, well, what about when Iron Man died? That wasn't super personal. He admired Iron Man, but that's not. He was more probably wrecked with like, oh shit, people are asking me all these questions and I can't be him. But no, this was like, you lost someone
like in your family, someone you loved.
This was the defining moment for his character, which spans the multiverse, because when they were talking about it, because even when Andrew was talking about his, he didn't mention his Uncle Ben, he mentioned Gwen, because that's his tragedy.
Right.
And I like how he was like, I went down a dark path. I stopped pulling my punches.
Yes.
And, I just don't want you to turn into me. So when he's going ham on Goblin, and I'm like, oh shit, everybody's just watching. And then when Toby steps in, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Toby stepping in, but he got stabbed. I'm like, you're not good. No, you're not getting away with killing Toby Maguire right now. Don't. But then he was like, oh no, I get stabbed all the time. I'm like, so just let him go back. Don't kill him. You've already killed one person. You don't have to kill two.
Thank God for that spider healing factor, right?
Yeah.
And I want to just jump back to the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin character. Do you think they were using some like facial enhancements on him in some of those scenes, because I mean, even like without the mask, when he was going like toward Green Goblin, and he some of his facial gestures, like the way he would smirk and smile, seemed almost a little CGI enhanced,
Oh no,
because
that's
they
him.
were like super
That's-
creepy.
That's
Like,
Willem
him.
Dafoe,
don't get
yeah.
me. He can
No,
act the fuck. Don't get me. He can act the fuck out of anything. I know that, but
I still feel like the greatest
some of
crime
it,
is
like,
he's never
wait,
played
can
the
he
Joker.
really move his mouth like that? Like that?
He's something of a creepy fucker himself, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We've seen that in The Lighthouse and other things, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, the greatest crime is he's never played the Joker. He would make a
Yeah.
great Joker.
speaking
Yeah.
of the
Facials.
Joker, maybe we'll get a Batman multiverse, and they'll bring back the Bruce Wayne Batman and every other Batman.
What if? Well,
Is that
so,
happening?
And we do have the Matt Reeves Batman, which is,
We got Flashpoint.
and
coming
we
out.
do have Flashpoint. I do, to your point though, Will. What if they made Into the Jokerverse, right? And it's just all of these different. I don't want that. You know why I don't want that?
Yeah. Why?
Because if you did that, then you'd have to give a sizable part to Jared Leto's Joker.
Yeah,
And no, we don't want
Ew. Ew.
I don't know.
Ew.
So
Hey, can we?
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to ask why was it conspicuous that they left the Miles character out of this movie? And again, I may be dumb for asking this. This may be a very dumb question. I know they referenced him kind of obliquely in a kind of a comment in the movie, but why is he not represented in this movie?
Go for it.
Me? Okay. Well, they haven't done a live action one yet. Like they've only done the Into the Spider-Verse version, and I figured they're saving Miles for a future thing, because also the other thing about the movie, the way I feel like it's a great closure for the Home trilogy, is if there's another fallout between Disney and Sony and they can't play with the character anymore, they've concluded this character story in the MCU. So theoretically, because no one knows who Peter Parker is anymore, and they just know Spider-Man, you don't have to reference him with other characters anymore. So that's why I think the movie went the way it did, is because of that. But also, I don't think, being that there hasn't been a live action Miles yet, it would have made sense to have him in it.
So that's very, very, very right.
Or they could have introduced him in this one.
Well, but see, here's the thing: they're not going to at this point, because so. And this part gets into like inside baseball, right? You know, like
it's getting to Sony Marvel BS.
Yeah,
like,
well, that's what it is, because
a lot of that goes.
Sony owns the Spider-Man character as well as the Spider-Man characters. So anyone that appears sort of in that like a radius, right? So that includes Miles Morales, who they worked out some very specific contracts to allow Peter Parker Spider-Man to appear in the MCU. I'm sure that if they want to work out those agreements with the Miles Morales one, they can. But I think right now Sony is saying, well, we've got these video games that are doing well. We've got this Into the Spider-Verse that's doing well. I think they have their own priorities right now to keep that character sort of separate from all of this.
They did reference him though.
They did reference and this was designed to be this was what the contract had allowed up to this point, this many Spider-Man movies. So at this point, this could be like you mentioned, like since they've now nobody knows Peter Parker Spider-Man, they can just sort of, we don't have to worry about Doctor Strange in the next movie going like, I need to call Peter, he can help me with this, because no one remembers who it is. It lets them compartmentalize this if they need to contractually. So that's kind of the inside baseball part of it.
And it doesn't take away what he's done with the Avengers. Spider-Man's still been a part of everything. It's just none of them know who Peter Parker is.
So none of them knows how to like get in touch with him to like tag him in on things.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that this movie sets the character up moving forward, because he's kind of been reset in a way, right? Like now he's back to making his own costume. He's out there doing his own thing. 3 new movies have been announced, right? But do we know if Tom Holland is going to be in them?
He's played coy with it because in interviews he was like, "Oh, if I'm still playing Spider-Man after 30, then I've done something wrong." I'm like, "Shut up, please, just stop it, stop it." We know, please. You love playing the character, and I think if they're gonna do those movies, it makes more sense. And I know they're not, but it would make sense if we don't see another Spider-Man movie for like 4 years, like 4 or 5 years. Let this breathe. Let him get a little older. Then, if you bring him back, he's truer to the comic version because he's probably going to be taking pictures for the Daily Bugle. He's living in a crap apartment. He might be through part of college. He most likely would eventually reunite with Michelle, MJ, because their chemistry, besides Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, which one?
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone.
Yeah.
Besides their chemistry in their movie, this is the other chemistry I truly believed. Watching their love story in this, I believe their relationship. Unlike a lot of relationships in a lot of comic book movies, which just feel forced and weird and awkward, this one I actually felt. So that's why I'm like, eventually they will bring him back, but give it a couple years. And then when he's older, then you can introduce Miles because he can be the mentor of Miles like he is in the comics. At that point, it would make a lot more sense.
I think that's a perfect ramp for them. And it frees up, like, I know Zendaya right now is like doing the Dune stuff. So she's going to, so she's probably going to need a couple year breathing gap too for some of these as well. So I think that makes perfect sense. And it lets them really focus on, they have another like direction that this phase is going to go with all of the Kang and multiverse and
it's
Doctor Strange and Wanda stuff. And I think,
it's like 2 different directions, honestly. I don't know, like, because you have the multiversal stuff, and then you have more of the street level, the Dark Avengers stuff that they've been setting up through like Falcon and Winter Soldier and Black Widow and stuff like that. So I feel like they've got so much moving parts right now, they can stand to work on building some other characters before relying to go back to Spider-Man for a little bit.
Plus, on top of all of that, they have a third avenue, which we haven't really gotten to see a ton of with this phase, but they're also going to be doing some of the cosmic stuff too. We know there's going to be another Guardians of the Galaxy. We know Thor: Love and Thunder is going to be very like, I think the stinger scene from this one, more so than setting up a future Spider-Man movie, is going to pay off in Thor: Love and Thunder. I think that's where we're going to see the payoff.
And then you also have the Marvels.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that, like, I don't understand the connection.
Yeah. So Eddie Brock appears in the stinger scene on this, and we know that he has Venom, which is this alien symbiote that attaches itself to a host and makes them become Venom, right? So that's sort of the backstory you need to know for him. When he's there, blipped over into our world for just a moment, a little piece of the symbiote is left behind, and we see it moving, meaning that now that symbiote is in the main MCU. So that could be setting up, maybe there's going to be a future Venom. Maybe there's going to be something like that. I imagine they're probably not going to do that right away because they still have this Tom Hardy Venom who's still making movies. But there are other characters in the MCU that have symbiote as sort of a thing to him, including a character that may be in Thor: Love and Thunder if they go that same direction. So that's my hunch that we're going to see.
It's interesting you got that out of that mid-credit scene, because all I got out of that scene was that somehow this is going to tie into the Ted Lasso universe with Danny Rojas as the bartender in the off season.
Oh my God!
Obviously, what that was.
Yeah, that was totally what it was.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hey, can we
talk
about
cameo? I was going to say before anything. There is another cameo that if you're fans of the Marvel Netflix stuff, got Charlie Cox and Matt Murdock as Peter's lawyer briefly. And that was the part where I was because I had mentioned it in my Hawkeye review when spoilers for Hawkeye if anybody is has not watched Hawkeye. They bring in Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin into the Hawkeye series, and there's a character in Hawkeye named Echo who is the adopted daughter of Kingpin. Basically, she's assassin or something like that. She's getting her own spinoff, and it's going to directly tie in with Kingpin. And now that we've confirmed Charlie Cox is in it, then most likely Daredevil is going to appear in the Echo series, which would just eventually lead to that. But he can also appear in She-Hulk, which would make sense because She-Hulk is also a lawyer, and it'd be nice to see them go toe to toe in the courtroom, at least for me anyway. So, but
you're nerding out on the exact same things I am, and I love that. Like,
so, that was the first moment, because the second that walking cane came down, I shouted an explicit out loud, because it was him.
Like,
and
oh shit!
He's so great in the role, and I'm just glad.
I do like that. We did watch some of Daredevil.
I'm just glad they brought him in, because he killed that role, and I'm just like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Can we also talk about that last stinger that was really just a trailer?
You mean a trailer? That was so weird that they did.
That felt really like didn't end on a great note for me. I don't know.
It was a weird placement for the trailer.
I'm used to seeing my trailers in front of the movie. God damn it.
Yeah. Oh, I will say kudos to my waitress at the Alamo Draft House to this. She did something that I've not had someone who works at any movie theater do before, and I thought this was super cool. As she was like bringing out like our food beforehand, she says, and by the way, at the end of the movie, stick around, there are 2 stingers. And that's all she did. She didn't say what they were. She just gave sort of like the stick around for the 2 stingers. So that, like, because there's always people who are like, should I go now? Do I wait? Is this? She just said
like 12 years. Who doesn't stick around till the end anymore?
Half our movie theater left, guys.
Yeah,
half my movie theater, even with this. And honestly, as people after the first stinger, a bunch of people got up and started like, okay, it's time to go. And she says, one more stinger, and a couple of them sat back down.
I'm so programmed. Any movie I go see, I stay through the credits now, which is good, because a lot of people work hard on the movies, and it's nice to see their names on the screen. But I'm programming at this point.
Absolutely. But and for us, where we talk about the movies, obviously we want to see everything that's part of that movie. But from a fan's perspective, from like a casual fan's perspective, I can totally understand that. Like, especially sitting through some stingers that were totally like went over my head, and were definitely for the super fan, like Easter eggy kind of value. Like, I'm like, it's great that I sat through the credits and I heard all the great music and saw all the great names, but I got to tell you that stinger really wasn't worth sitting around for, because for me, I don't care. I don't want that nugget about a movie that's coming in 6 years. You know what I mean? I don't need it.
I saw.
I know, but that's me. That's not everybody. I get it.
I saw someone share like a great little like Twitter like post meme, whatever it was, that was like Marvel fans basically sit through 9 minutes of credits just for a 5-second scene of someone coming out. By the way, guys, I'm Bloopus the Firebringer. I'll see you in the next movie. And that's what it must feel like
in Eternals, didn't it?
I think that's what they were talking about with Pip the Troll and Star Fox.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, we got some great comments going.
Oh yeah, chat is popping.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Kev Henny says, if you could rate a Spider-Man movie series, both Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire, from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you rank each? Well, I don't know if we could rank each one, because we'd have 40 different rankings here.
I think you might be meaning just overall the trilogy.
I could say where I put this movie. This movie goes to the top for me. I just love how it brought everything together. Overall, I know you guys have said that. Will, I think you said the 2 Raimi movies are kind of at the 1 and 2 for you.
This one's the highest. I mean, I think it's pretty telling though that this is my favorite Spider-Man movie in. What does that make, like, in 19 years? Because the second one, I remember Spider-Man 2 was like 2002, because I remember the trailers had the World Trade Center at first because of the 2, and then they had to change the marketing for it. So, I mean, if those were kind of my favorites, this is the first one that I've like really loved as much as I did since 2000. So it's been 20 years since I've had one this high. So how do I rate them? I mean, it's hard because 1 and 2 is then followed by 3, which is emo dancing
Ugh,
Spider-Man,
yeah.
which I still think is better than the Andrew Garfield movies, but not by much. So I think the Homecoming and Far From Home are kind of middle of the pack altogether. So I don't know if I give the edge to Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland's trilogy. I do think Tom Holland's the better Spider-Man though, so I'll give that one the higher score.
Yeah, it's weird. I think Tom Holland, especially in this movie, is like the best on-screen Spider-Man. I still think Andrew Garfield is the best Peter Parker for me. I think he is just the most expressive. I always thought Tobey Maguire was a really weird choice to play Spider-Man, and he still doesn't completely work for me. But I do hold that very first Spider-Man movie in very high regard. But I guess to answer Kev's question, I would put these movies, specifically the third one, at the top for the live action. I guess then I'd go 1 and 2 from the originals, then the Andrew Garfield movies, and then Spider-Man 3 from Raimi.
I had 2 high for a long time, and then like it's still high. Like I would put 2 right behind this one. I like the Homecoming trilogy pretty well. I would still probably put Spider-Man 1 in between Homecoming and Far From Home. I think kind of meshed in there a little bit. Just over time, I think it's aged not as well as like the other ones have. And then the Andrew Garfield one, albeit they're not horrendous, and I do actually like Andrew Garfield. I thought he was a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker. Because he was more quippy at the time, and I didn't get that from Tobey at first. I love him in this movie. I think he's amazing in this one in terms of both. But yeah, I'd say I'd rank the Tobey Maguire and the Holland one pretty close to each other in terms of like 8, 9-ish. I wouldn't say it's a perfect 10 because of course you have Spider-Man 3, and then again Homecoming and Far From Home aren't as strong as this one, so I think they balance each other out in the long run.
It was great seeing Tobey in this one, just because I don't know, it had a different feel to it. Like, you're bringing this guy back; he's obviously approaching or in middle age right now, right? And there was even a joke. I forget what they called him, what he looked like.
What
did they say?
Youth counselor.
Like a cool youth pastor, right?
Yes, youth pastor. Yeah,
that was a pretty. I laughed at that one.
Yeah.
At that one. But I don't know. It was great to see him come back, and it kind of made seeing these 2 characters come back made me think about what's going on in their universe. Like, what, since we saw them last, like, what are we catching them? Are we supposed to be catching them kind of? I don't know. It's hard to tell timing wise, right? Where this occurs in their universe, right? The same amount of time hasn't gone by, even though they maybe look older. I don't know if we can assume that all these years have gone by since we last saw them. I don't know how that works.
Well, I believe they did say their stories continue. That's why Andrew was like, I got rageful and stopped pulling my punches. It's different for the villains because the villains were brought in from the moment that they died. That's why they had to de-age Alfred Molina with the facial stuff to make him look a little younger for that. Okay. But I think for Andrew and Tobey, their stories technically continued. Right. So he did kind of come off like a Peter B. Parker from like Into the Spider-Verse because he is a lot older.
That's why Tobey has so many city miles on him, Jim.
Okay.
I did like
but I can relate to that. I could totally relate to that.
And we also got to see, this was a forgive a bit of a parallel here, but like this was a redemption story for a lot of the villains that we saw in the original ones. I think in some ways, it might be sort of a redemption story for Tobey Maguire, so we haven't seen him in a lot of things lately, and apparently that's because he is, at least as far as everything that I've heard.
Did he
not
get
canceled? Not canceled. He's not canceled. He's just apparently an asshole. Like people don't like working with him. To the point of, Jim, do you remember that? And I forget the name of it, but the Aaron Sorkin movie with Jessica Chastain, where she does where she's
Molly's
like running
Game?
the gambling. Molly's Game, yeah. And so Michael
Nice one,
Cera in that movie plays a famous Hollywood actor who, and they never said who it was, but he was basically just like
Playing himself.
Michael Cera was playing Tobey Maguire. They just couldn't say it. But that's the Tobey Maguire was the guy who was like a real life asshole to like the Molly character.
But even real life assholes get redemptions, right?
Yeah.
Even real life assholes eventually get redemptions. We love a redemption story. Generally doesn't matter who it is. It all comes around that way. And
yeah,
I guess I didn't know that. But still, to me it was a treat seeing him. Like when he walked through that doorway. I think that got a huge reaction in our theater. Like one of these. Oh, here he is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been a fun discussion, as they always are when we get together and talk about films. We've already been talking about this movie for an hour. I bet we could talk about it for another hour.
Probably.
But alas, we are going to go ahead and move towards wrapping things up. Any final thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home before we close this mofo down?
I'll just say that this is one that, and generally I'm not going to say this about too many Marvel movies, but this is one that I would definitely go back and revisit when it finally gets to streaming. I'm not a rewatcher of really anything, even movies I love. I don't always go back and watch them, but this is one I would definitely probably rewatch, babe, if you wanted to.
Cool. Good to know. I'd totally be down.
Yeah, densely packed. That makes a lot of sense. Just there's a lot going on in this movie, so rewatch. Will, you had that experience of watching it twice. I've only watched it the once, so I imagine there's a lot that you pick up on. I love. Kev says, "Please keep going for another hour. I have time." Kev, as much as I would love to, I've got to eat dinner at some point, and look, we could like chain Will down to the chair and make him keep talking comic books, but eventually
I gotta drive to Miami tomorrow morning.
Yeah, he's gonna say, "Hey, let me go. I need to see my family."
I'm going straight to bed after this. So. Unfortunately, but yeah. But yeah, and I think it's early. I've seen it twice. It is probably my favorite of the live actions right now, and it's kind of cheating because you have every element from all the other movies in it, so it's probably has that sort of edge to it compared to the other ones. I'm glad they left it open for if they decide to revisit the character, because they are. It made 260 million opening weekend. They're not going to be like, "Oh, we're done."
So I guess that's my question. You called this a trilogy. Is this kind of the end of Tom Holland's main thrust as Spider-Man? You think this is kind of a conclusion?
I think it's the end of the Home trilogy, and I'm treating the Home trilogy like a prequel for his development. Because if you look at Homecoming and Far From Home, they're very much him growing into this role. It's that's why I think that having it against the backdrop of high school makes sense, because he's done with high school. Well, he has to get his GED since he was erased from existence, so he has to get a general education degree. But it kind of parallels that with his journey to becoming the main version of Spider-Man that most people know. Now, if you do a new trilogy, it's a completely different. He's going to be a completely different version of Spider-Man than he was in the Home trilogy. I feel he's going to be much more mature. He's going to have those scars that are going to define his actions going forward. So it is kind of the end of the trilogy. It is, to me, it's just the end of the first trilogy of them.
Yeah.
And to your point, like, this movie did make a just absolute bucket load of money. So if there was any like hesitation for Sony to come back to the table and keep talking to Disney Marvel proper, I think that hesitation probably goes right out the window. I would be very surprised if they don't go back to this money tree and give it another shake.
Right, again and again and again.
There's actually an upswell from what I've seen online. People want Andrew Garfield to get his Amazing Spider-Man 3 now. After what he did in this movie, they want him to get his third movie just because of how he performed in this one.
More Tick Tick Boom stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't really like Tick Tick Boom, but I would be all over a Spider-Man 3 with Andrew Garfield. Sorry, Will. I didn't dig it. I felt like the music was a complete ripoff of Rent, and it was I don't know. I didn't dig it. But
I haven't seen it, so
hopefully you recover from the heart attack.
Yeah,
I will say this about it. I didn't dislike it as much as you did, Brad. So I would say if there are Andrew Garfield fans here who haven't seen it, I would say go see it. It's available on streaming right now. So
yeah,
I think
you
it's
go.
worth a watch, especially if you're a musical theater geek. It's worth a watch.
and if you like, I mean, that's I think what it boils down to is if you like Rent or not, because it was written by the guy that wrote Rent. So if you like, there'll be people who don't like Jonathan Larson's music and they're going to say like, well, this isn't for me, and that's totally fine. But for me, I was a big Rent head in my formative years, so this was exciting for me. But that's a different review. That's a different episode.
That's another whole review.
But now that we've had our plug section, guys, where can people chat with you online? Will D, let's start with you. And if you could remind our listeners where to find your wonderful YouTube channel as well, that'd be great.
Sure. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, all at DGeekWill. I post weekly for the most part. I do movie reviews, trailer reactions, gaming, discussion, some drinking, but it's usually all wrapped in this geeky stuff that you see before you. I'm super close to 400 subscribers. I need like 20 subscribers. I was trying to get there by the end of the year. So if anybody wants to subscribe,
Yeah, I'll second that. Guys, any movie geeks, comic book geeks, superhero geeks, gaming geeks, check out Will's channel. It's awesome. He's got the gig down, and everyone is entertaining, especially his last one, which is like a promo / satire, or I don't know what you want to call it, but it was
meant to be like an introduction to what I do. I did something similar a year ago for like a 3-year anniversary where I just got like a clip show of some funny stuff. I know not everyone watches the videos all the way through, and I put a lot of dumb stuff in it sometimes that people miss. So I made a clip show for that. This one, I decided to riff on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the opening scene from that movie, and I'm shirtless through half of it. So if anybody likes a hairy black guy, there's that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah.
Hand raises here,
Yes.
But yeah, it's that, and it has some clips from some more recent stuff.
I can't tell you how many times I went back and watched you getting out of the bed to see if you actually had underwear on or not. So I'm just,
little peek behind the curtain. I had to reshoot part of the bathroom scene, and I was not wearing anything. So
wow.
So you're saying there's a really awesome blooper reel somewhere.
Please
Yes,
send the outtakes to Brad at movieverspodcast.com.
I will do that.
But call to action for anyone that's listening to this right now, like whether it be live watching us or watching later, follow his YouTube channel. Like, go and do that right now. That's if you enjoyed this episode. Yeah, go follow Will's YouTube channel.
Subscribe to him and vice versa.
Yep.
Don't forget to hit the bell.
So.
Don't forget to hit the bell so that you get the notice.
Smash that like and subscribe button. Yeah.
Well, Will D, such a pleasure to have you on. And
thank you so much for having me. Really I was super excited. I'm super glad I got to do this with you guys. I've kind of always wanted to. So this was a great night. So thank you so much.
Wow, absolutely.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Doesn't even have to be a geeky movie. If there's ever any movie you want to review with us, just let us know. And
or television or whatever. I watch a bunch of TV. I've been doing reviews for most of the Disney Plus shows. So I just like talking about geeky stuff. So it can be whatever, honestly.
You come to the right place then, because so do I. Jim Pugliavigo, where can people connect with you between now and I think our next recording is going to be in 2022. We'll talk about that.
Most likely, yeah.
Because we're out of town next week. But where can people connect with you?
You can find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP Out West, where, it's movie talk on there, and mostly movie talk. I try not to get into too many other things that I don't know anything about. And then you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. Hit me up.
All right. Thank you for that. I just want to highlight this comment real quick from Ryan Rivera, who says he misses joining us live. Ryan used to join us live all the time. Mm-hmm. And Ryan, I don't know if it's work or just other stuff going on, but I know you haven't had the ability to do that in a while. So really, really great to see you during the live stream. Thanks so much for joining
Welcome
us.
back.
Yeah, always a treat to see you and everybody else who joined us in the live stream tonight. We weren't able to keep up with everything happening in chat or read all of the comments, but just know that we love and adore you folks. Thanks so much for that. Will, if people want to chat with you, where can they do so?
All right. Check me out on my socials. I've got Twitter and Instagram at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis there. Just send me a message first so I know you are. You can search for William Lindis on Letterboxd, where I rate and review a lot of films. And also, I'm doing a lot of TikTok right now because I'm an old on TikTok. And I'm at the Movie Bear there. So give me a follow. It's mostly me shirtless doing like 30-second like memes.
All right, awesome. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. We will see you in the new year. Happy holidays. Be safe. We love you all. And we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Safe.